Chapter 55. Pilot Samran rubbed her eyes, muffling her soft voice. Oh, okay, what was that? What do we do now? Taken off guard by so many of the gold rapids flooding in at once, the crew of the HMS Vercingetorix found themselves frozen, stupefied by what was occurring. The Time Lord in the blue suit was being carried further and further into the futuristic, oddly well-illuminated tunnel. For some reason, Ruckus remained perfectly still, frozen.
Oi, stop, you lot! Put down Mr. Blue this instant!
Sully furiously hobbled down the cavern after his friend, the alien in the blue suit, being body surfed by the golden soldiers.
That's a terrible idea,
the captain said. He walked behind the crew, following Samran. Navigator Denry and Dr. Jones, they were briskly jogging beside the struggling Sully Brontworth.
I don't see any other options. That time traveler is your only ticket out of this. My only ticket out of this.
The retired Commodore answered, hurrying ahead. He stared back at Ruckus incredulously.
Tin Man, we need you up here. Now, wake up!
Ruckus was still.
Damn it.
No, we should stay put, just like your civil guard, the captain insisted. Are you sure, Captain? Pilot Samran shook her head. Seems like...
Samran, look at the walls.
It's like the rest of this hollowed-out mountain, all covered up with this thick gold wiring. The captain touched a strand. Dr. Jones nodded. Where did this come from? Is it old? Or, like Mr. Blue said, too far ahead of its time? Sully panted.
My friend is up there. Now, what's your bleeding point?
The captain caught up to him and stopped him, gripped his elbow.
The point is, Commodore, sir, what if this mountain, or this entire planet, isn't just a big factory for rapids? What if it's...
Let's just get the advisor in the blue outfit, the guy who'll probably actually have an answer, Navigator Denry interrupted. The captain gave him a look.
Sorry, sir.
Tired.
As we all are, son. As we all are.
Sully ignored the captain and the navigator and hurried on, the others staying for a brief moment to inspect the blinking, shiny gold wiring in the walls of the cave. It was thick in patches, other times spindly like a spider's web, strobing lights indicating something the crew could never guess at. Out of nowhere, a streak of silver, so fast as to barely register in the human eye, was the only indicator to the retired Commodore and the crew of the HMS Vercingetorix that Ruckus was on the way to aid Mr. Blue.
Ugh, I guess Ruckus woke up,
Sully said. After several tense moments and anticipating the worst, Sully and the others finally rounded the corner. The Time Lord in the cobalt suit was strapped by all four appendages, and his forehead braced by wire to a large golden tablet which hung vertically, swinging slightly back and forth, about a foot off the ground. His lower face and shoulders were latched into a peculiarly designed golden wire mask, which restricted his mouth and neck movements. He looked unhappy. Sully was struck by the antechamber they found themselves in, a huge, cavernous web of golden wire, casting light that shimmered in a flaxen, yellow honey and the color of fire. The wires grew thicker and enmeshed until they culminated in the tablet Mr. Blue was affixed to. Mr. Blue was unhappily staring back at Ruckus, who had grown to the size of a behemoth, twice as tall as any human, and abnormally wide, full of steel and silver and sharp metal, huge arms and arsenal, slowly walking around the room, scanning. Dear Lord, what happened to your... Dr. Jones slowed herself as her words caught up to her thoughts. Security guard. Oh, I see.
Yes, our Tin Man is a bit dramatic, but for a purpose, I suspect.
Sully stared around the room.
What happened to all the gold rapids?
Mr. Blue wiggled and made incomprehensible guttural noises. Pilot Samran cautiously walked over to the Time Lord in bondage, never taking her eyes off the offensive mode of Ruckus. Again, Mr. Blue was trying to get her attention. She peered closer at the stranger's eyes, large blue marbles that looked up at the ceiling, then down at his mask, then right at her. Oh, they're on you. The Time Lord's already impossible wide eyes widened even further. He blinked once. They're on you? No way. Crap! All 100 of those golden soldiers?
Mr. Blue blinked once. I think we should consider how bottlenecked we are here.
The captain surveyed the scene grimly.
Suppose more of the gold rapids decide to arrive, make batteries out of us.
Agreed,
Sully said.
Rockets, break old man out of here.
Dr. Jones advanced.
I'm sorry, no. We have no idea what just happened. Clearly this is not human technology, and it's nothing like I've ever seen on the Rapids construct. You should let me take a scan, see if they're interfering with any of his major systems.
You know he isn't human, right?
I hadn't considered that.
Dr. Jones looked over at her husband. The captain looked bewildered, as did Navigator Denry.
Leave it up to him.
Sully walked to Mr. Blue.
Can you handle it if Raucus tore you out of that pickle, old man?
The Time Lord, again, appeared to have a seizure and blinked repeatedly while emitting muffled shouts.
I'm calling that a yes,
the captain insisted.
The more I stare at these golden yellow, which is getting brighter, if you hadn't noticed, and these lights, which are beginning to blink faster, the more I'm convinced that... Let's get out of here,
Pilot Samran finished.
Sully nodded and waved to Ruckus.
Do your worst.
Early,
came the one-word response of the tremendous monster of silver wire and bulky steel. Ruckus ripped away the medallion-colored tubing and gold chunks of blinking metal. After the first wrist latch, Mr. Blue tore away most of the mask himself, removing a deep, jagged-looking strand of golden wire from his throat. Denry gagged.
Okay.
Mr. Blue was freed, except for his left hand. It remained affixed under a latch, along with this temporal wrist device.
All right. Okay. All right, okay. Old man, I think we need to... No, you shut up,
Mr. Blue yelled angrily.
Okay.
Mr. Blue shook his head.
Stop repeating yourself. Turn the page, you daft old fort.
Are you quite all right?
Dr. Jones asked.
No, I am not. I'm going to have to cut off my damn hand and leave it here attached to the temporal wrist device. Do you know how much that bloody well pisses me off?
Navigator Denry put up his hands.
Hold on, why would you have to...
Because, in order for us all to escape, there has to be a Gallifreyan biological component in this device to fall into thinking there is a whole Time Lord. A hand should do. It has enough Ultron energy.
So weird, Navigator Denry remarked.
And if I activate the metal platform stasis field, reverse the polarity in the existing dampener to reflect...
Pilot Samran noticed the room glowing more brightly, beginning to fluctuate. Pulse.
We don't have time for the highbrow lingo. Plain English.
The Time Lord nodded.
Fair enough. I'm going to freeze time in this world engine. The phase won't last long, but it may just be enough to get us back to your planet and to my perch.
Navigator Denry looked around.
Who the hell is...
While the Golden Rapids army's connected to me and their central power influx, I figured out the true purpose of this world engine, and it's best if we are no longer here.
Mr. Blue struggled using his free hand to try to program this difficult-to-reach watch. The captain crossed his arms.
Don't keep us in suspense, man. Tell us and let's move.
The world engine is a massive explosive device. A bomb. In last measure against the Earth, should the Gold Rapids army prove unsuccessful in their deceit maneuver.
Measure subtle,
Sully said.
Oi, and you,
Mr. Blue pointed, shouting at the retired Commodore.
Thanks for saying it out loud. Apparently the D word is what activated the cognizance of the army. It came straight for me, you ponce.
Sully tilted his head.
Oi, and I was supposed to know that? Doesn't matter anymore. Will somebody please come over here and chop my hand off already?
Ruckus returned to his normal silver humanoid form, extending one long blade of his forearm.
Look away if you're squeamish.
The Time Lord smiled. Most did, in fact, look away. They still heard the wet, vicious, violent hacking noise, however, as Ruckus dismembered a portion of the Time Lord in the cobalt suit. When Sully opened his eyes, he saw Mr. Blue running back out of the tunnel, clutching an oozing orange stump, followed by Ruckus and the crew of the Vercingetorix. The retired Commodore hobbled after them quickly, urging them to slow down just a touch. Then He thought of how foolish this sounded. The group re-emerged at the factory floor of the hollow mountain, staring up at the stories-high golden armory.
I've activated the watch. We have a few minutes before the time reverts back to normal, so...
The Time Lord wrapped the tourniquet around his amputated wrist with his azure tie.
Pilot and navigator, what weapon would you prefer to fly?
You are not serious. Denry shook his head.
The axe!
Samran barked, staring up at the half-kilometer-long massive golden broad axe, shining in bright fluorescence. The Time Lord grinned.
That's the spirit.
He ran, followed by the others, a football field length across the shiny gold flooring to the bottom of the grip of the massive axe. The Time Lord activated a side panel, revealing a large door. It creaked open, and a huge golden platform extended.
Ladies before swine?
You're not saying it right, Dr. Jones said. I cannot believe this. She grudgingly stepped inside. Mr. Blue ushered in the pilot and the navigator as the captain tried to convince the Time Lord to simply repair the escape pod of the Vercingetorix, which was still on the surface.
No time. Time will only be frozen for a limited time. Then we're out of time. Ha! Don't you get it? We don't have the time.
I thought you were a Time Lord.
Oh, shut up. Get in there.
The Time Lord demanded. The captain sighed and boarded. Mr. Blue sealed them all inside and turned on the operating lights. The loading bay of the gigantic war axe was empty, save for one small gold room. Although room wasn't the correct term, as it was round, it appeared as if it was made to fit a dozen.
That's the control dock, where the command officers sit. It shoots straight from the landing platform, where all the gold soldiers load, up and to the main control room. Go, get on in.
Pilot Samran eagerly climbed into the foreign alien cockpit, followed by the reluctant navigator Denry. The Time Lord hurried the rest as quickly as he could, dismissing the vocal concerns by his comrades concerning his bright orange blood and his missing hand.
I'm fine. Let's go.
The instant they were all inside the gold cockpit, Mr. Blue initiated a standard control setup. The interior reformed before the pilot and navigator's eyes, providing a work terminal in legible text, unsophisticated enough for even a monkey to operate. Without warning, the golden sphere was rushed to the top of the axe as the enormous mountain above it slowly creaked open. A screen phased into existence. All could see the golden army below, frozen in time. And, in the far distance, the escape pod of the Vercingetorix. Pilot Samran pointed.
There she is.
What seemed like an ocean of space away was the tiny, beautiful blue marble called Earth. Mr. Blue smiled hopefully.
Quite. Straight on, till sunset.
You really must work on your colloquialisms. Dr. Jones tentatively sat in a golden chair, which had jutted up from the floor, strapping herself in. The captain joined beside her.
How are we supposed to do this?
Navigator Denry asked.
Have your Tin Man fly us back? He's a rapid.
Negatory. Once merged to the polylating mechanism, we would be absorbed, unable to detach.
Ruckus intoned. Denry shook his head, looking up at the Time Lord.
And you can't just...
No, I can't.
Mr. Blue held up his bloody orange stump.
You have 2 hands. You right, get.
Pilot Samran reached over and touched Navigator Denry's shoulder, staring at him.
We can do this. I don't know.
Samran again said, with much more force.
We can do this.
Mr. Blue nodded.
You can do anything, you crazy humans. Most of the time you're being forced to, like now.
The group watched on the surface as the golden soldiers slowly began to turn and move. The effect of the time field was wearing off. Suddenly, the mammoth gold axe shot out from inside the hollow mountain, blasting a destination straight toward Earth. The crew inside yelling with disbelief that they were actually on their way home. The Time Lord gave the navigator a complicated series of numbers, plotting the course which followed the first gold rapids strike, the gigantic javelin. Minutes of nervous tension were passed in silence inside the gold cockpit. Finally, they reached Earth's atmosphere, a massive golden axe plowing down through the clouds, as if some titan had dropped it in battle. Pilot Samran and Navigator Denry struggled and cursed to keep the velocity under control, utterly burning out the huge interstellar engines of the war axe. It slammed into the crust of the planet, skidded flat, causing a small earthquake, then slid for several kilometers before coming to rest near its sibling, the enormous Golden Javelin. The military and civilian crews of hundreds were already there, having been dispatched to investigate this strange, huge gold spear, which the Gold Rapids deployed previously. Another crowd of people nearby, including entertainment and news reporters, which watched the entire event, awestruck. Several minutes had to go by before anyone inside the cockpit of the war axe could regain their hearing, as the impact caused a terrible tinnitus. The violent collision caused many a bruise and a scrape, yet overall, amazingly, they were all fine. Sully was the first to open the hatch to the outside and get a breath of fresh Earth air.
I told you, didn't I? Didn't I tell you? What did I say?
The Time Lord coughed.
Fine, we'll take a vacation. Next trip. Promise.
The captain helped Dr. Jones out of the gold cabin, followed by Navigator Denry and Pilot Samran, who were holding hands and looking at each other quite fondly. Helicopters began circling overhead, and Mr. Blue heard the first of many, many sirens. He jumped down to the hard ground, peering off into the distance, searching.
So, Mr. Blue, I presume you're going to help us explain all of this?
The captain folded his arms, staring at the back of the Time Lord's head. Dr. Jones agreed.
There's no way they're going to believe us. You need to be there. You're an alien, for heaven's sake.
The Time Lord, now staring up at the sky dismally, did not reply. His buddy, the retired Commodore, stepped in.
You'll all be fine and well. Let us go get a change of clothes out of my traveller's vehicle, and we'll join you presently.
The captain sighed, then proudly saluted him.
Sir, you have my gratitude.
Think nothing of it.
The retired Commodore saluted in kind.
Keep yourself, your crew, and,
Sully smiled mischievously,
your lovely wife safe.
Navigator Denry saluted as well, sending off the retired Commodore.
Slow down, damn it,
Sully yelled. He limped after Mr. Blue, who had snuck off while they spoke, and now was nothing but a blue shadow near the wreckage of the horizon. Finally, having caught up, he saw the familiar form of an antique teal grandfather clock. Perch was waiting. He stepped inside and unwittingly felt his lungs expand. Sully felt like he got a fresh breath of life from Purge every time he boarded the beautiful time machine. In the center of the massive antiquarian control room, the cerulean and sapphire control, by which Mr. Blue stood bickering, as usual, with Saber.
What do you mean you've been standing here waiting? You could have helped me back there. My time watch is gone. I think the seat is alive now, and I now have to grow a new hand. It's going to take hours.
Saber placed her hands on her hips. I can't do anything for you. There are other Time Lords, and they don't run to Unit or Torchwood or Captain Jack or the Shadow Proclamation every time they come upon problems. That's what this is all about, Traveler. You're still learning how to be a Time Lord. You have to make mistakes along the way, and the biggest piece of advice I can give is that you can't depend on your technology. They're just tools. You can't let them devolve into crutches. Perch won't always be available. I won't always be available. And you won't always have your time watch to save your ass. Mr. Blue took a deep breath, sighed, nodded. Then he abruptly looked at her, excited as a child at Christmas. What? Saber asked.
The attack is on its way. The Golden Rapids army have merged into one huge humanoid form. When it lands on Earth, it'll stand twice as tall as the Statue of Liberty. If it can't dominate Earth, control every individual therein, as its programming indicates, well, the world engine bomb is right behind him.
Headed for Earth? Now? The Time Lord nodded with a triumphant grin.
I was, worried about that. Seemed like you'd forgotten that most important bit of the invasion.
Sully put a cigarette into his mouth. Mr. Blue slapped it out.
Oh, yes, they're on their way. But I have a surprise they won't be ready for. Aye.
Sully looked down. What? Saber asked. The Time Lord stared down at his temporal wrist device, or where it used to be, then looked up and pressed a single button on Purge's console.
Return to sender.
On the incoming trajectory spatial scans of the Earth Empire military in 2467, there was a golden form once, an immense gold-like warrior, which was headed for the planet. It was followed by an asteroid, fully 1/10 the size of Earth, on a collision course. That day should have been the end of the freedom of planet Earth, if not all life itself. The military records indicate that both the cosmically immense golden space night and the extinction-level asteroid behind it vanished. This event remains unexplained. An alarm. Always an alarm, she thought. Nothing has been going right lately. Nothing at all. She pressed the lever. On screen, it read data from 2467, which was spewing out in torrents. Explain what this means, the renegade Time Lady demanded. Her Evertardis replied,
A temporal device storing a focused amount of Ultron energy has exploded, causing a backlash. Your Golden Rapids army is in temporal vortex, warp state, returning.
Returning? What the hell do you mean, returning? Returning to where?
Returning to original coordinates.
The screen above the console blurred to life, and she stared in utter horror as the gigantic Golden Knight appeared instantly from a neon blue wormhole. Right outside, massive sword striking downward at her, and behind him, headed straight for her Evertardis, was the world engine bomb. Deceit began to scream. No. Fuck.